Brown brought back Peter Mandelson to help deal with the economic downturn. Now the Tories have called up their own big gun from times past to be Shadow Business Secretary, the former Chancellor, Kenneth Clarke. He said he'd accepted the job to help tackle what he called the gravest economic crisis I have known. Here's our political correspondent, Ben Wright.
He's back, and so is the scrum on his street. Ken Clarke's return to frontline politics pitches him against Lord Mandelson, the business secretary. This morning, the former Chancellor was relishing the role.
Well, I know Peter quite well, and I always get on with him quite well personally, but I found his return rather startling, and he's been part of a team that plainly keeps making different efforts to get out of the present trouble without knowing quite where they're going.
George Osborne, the Shadow Chancellor, is said by Tory sources to have been the one who argued for the former Chancellor's return. This morning, the party leadership was happy to have Mr Clarke's economic clout back on the front bench.
Well, I'm delighted Ken is joining the Shadow Cabinet. He was the last Chancellor of the Exchequer to take the country out of recession. He has a huge amount of experience to bring to bear, and he'll make up part of what I'm sure will be the best economic team in Britain.
At Downing Street earlier, there was a mischievous reaction from the Prime Minister.
It's good to have someone in the Shadow Cabinet who is supportive of our policy on Europe, supportive of our policy on VAT, and probably quietly supportive of many of our other policies.
But Ken Clarke, first elected in 1970, brings experience and character to the Tory team. Not many modern politicians would be caught doing this, or even this, or wearing these. But the jovial, cigar-chomping, bird-watching, jazz-loving, beer-drinking Ken Clarke isn't a slick political waxwork. He's his own bloke, but a bloke that few of the Eurosceptics in the Conservative Party wanted to see leading it. Ken Clarke has fought and lost 3 Tory leadership contests since 1997. This is 2005, when the party plumped for David Cameron. As a Conservative cabinet minister, Ken Clarke had bust-ups with ambulance drivers, doctors and teachers. He had a reputation for saying what he thought.
Will you explain to people of
Derbyshire schools today? Mr Young, go away, stop making a fool of yourself and make a better job of running your education.
Ken Clarke's strong support for Europe has often put him on the side of the government rather than his own party. He and David Cameron have agreed to disagree. Alan Duncan is the man Ken Clarke replaces. He's off to be Shadow Leader of the Commons. The other big move is the promotion of Chris Grayling to Home Affairs. Ken Clarke's return will annoy Eurosceptics, but David Cameron thinks it's worth the risk to get this former Chancellor back in the spotlight. Ben Wright, BBC News, Westminster.
Let's speak to Joe Coburn, who's at Conservative Party headquarters. But Mr Cameron does need a unified cabinet, doesn't he, Joe? So if Mr Clarke is back, does this mean we won't see any more divisions on issues such as the Europe?
Well, it certainly all smiles today, as we've seen from Ken Clarke saying, all right, we hold different positions on Europe, but we'll be able to overcome those. The risk is, will they be able to in the long term, particularly when we've got Euro elections in June? Kenneth Clarke is a big beast, he's a big character, and politics will no doubt be more interesting for his return. But it's a gamble for David Cameron, because it does hold risks. He's outspoken, Ken Clarke. He is his own man. And although he says he'll keep quiet on his views, it may be difficult for him in the long run. But this is about the economy. This is about beefing up the economic team with the crisis going on ahead in the months to come. And, of course, matching the government's own heavyweight, Lord Mandelson.
And a wider reshuffle of the Shadow Cabinet today. Joe, what reaction to that?
Well, there has been a significant reshuffle, and this could well be, as David Cameron has said, the team that then leads the Conservatives into the next election. Some of the biggest moves, really, Alan Duncan, whom Ken Clarke is replacing, becomes Shadow Leader of the House, and Theresa May, who was in that position, gets quite a big promotion. She'll be on the economic team in shadow work and pensions. But, as we heard, perhaps the biggest move he's seen as an attack dog on Labour policies. Christopher Grayling obviously has done an effective work at shadow work and pension, and he becomes the Shadow Home Secretary, replacing Dominic Grieve, who moves sideways to Justice.
Joe, thank you. The time now then, 19 minutes past 1. Excuse me, our top story this lunchtime. For the second time in just 3 months, the taxpayers pumping billions of pounds into Britain's banks. Coming up, a 500-mile mission of mercy. How the RAF came to the rescue of premature twins